Dinner started late, as usual. The old ceiling fan stuttered against the heat, swirling the smell of chicken and farofa across the apartment. I sat at the end of the cramped table, beneath the dying bougainvillea that drooped through the window's broken slats. My mother's laughter boomed as she told a story about the neighbor's rooster attacking her laundry. It was an ordinary evening, sweat, noise, and stories, until my fork scraped my plate too loudly. "You're quiet tonight?" my father said, picking his teeth with the prong of his fork. I stared at my food, heart thumping in my ribcage. The entire family, my Aunt Teresa, my cousin Dudu, my sister Anna, turned to look at me. Tiago, my brother, snorted under his breath. I have something to tell you," I forced out, feeling a hot prickle behind my eyes. My mother leaned forward, eyes glistening with concern. "Is it your university applications?" "Not exactly," I said, swallowing hard. "I'm not applying to any. I want to write a novel." The silence cut through the old apartment, heavy as a thundercloud. Far away, down the hill, the samba music and shouting from the football match carried up through the open window. I tried to look at them. Each of them tried to hold steady, but my hands trembled in my lap. Teresa hissed through her teeth like she'd just touched something hot. "A novel? You're joking, right?" My father's eyebrows shot up. "In English?" "In Portuguese." I looked at him, wishing for something. Approval, maybe? Or just curiosity. "I want to tell our story, puppy." He barked a laugh. The sound was sharp, stripped of all warmth. "Our story? Who do you think you are, Jorge Amado?" Anna was pinching the edge of her napkin, cheeks flushed. "It's hard enough to make money teaching, Joao," she whispered. "Books? Books don't feed you." Dudu grinned, sharp and yellow. "Or you'll end up writing those love stories, eh? The ones with Fabio on the cover? With the big hair and the open shirt?" "Tiago, my sweet, infuriating older brother," chimed in. "Let the dreamer dream. When he's starving, maybe he'll be less of a pain in the ass." I could feel their laughter crawling up the walls. My mother's face pinched with worry, her mouth trembling around unshed words. I imagined how I must have looked, skinny, pale, chin jutting in stupid stubbornness. "It's not a joke," I said, voice shaking. "I want to write stories about us, about the hills, about the—" "Oh, but you would rather starve with a pen in your hand? There's no room for dreamers in this family," he snapped. "Not when money is tight." No one spoke for a long moment. If I didn't, I would lose something of myself. "One day," I promised, looking each of them in the eyes, "you'll see my book on the shelves. You'll see that I wasn't wasting my time." Teresa sucked her tongue. "Ridiculo," she muttered. "As if any publisher cares about a poor kid from Vidigal." Tiago laughed until he coughed, but all I could feel was the heat of my own small, trembling defiance, the kind that couldn't last forever. I left the apartment early the next morning. I packed my notebooks, my worn paperback copy of Dom Casmurro, and a pair of clean underwear into an old backpack. My mother caught me at the door, soft, tired hands around my wrist. "You know it's hard out there," she whispered, tears gathering in her lashes. "I know," I managed, "but I need to try." She nodded, pressing a 50 real note into my hand before letting go. I never forgot that gesture. I fell through the city looking for somewhere to land. I found a room in Copacabana, the kind with green mildew stains and cockroaches, a leaky tap that gurgled like a sick throat. My job was washing dishes at a feijoada bar. My fingers always smelled of garlic and burnt beans. At night, I wrote, sometimes on greasy napkins or with a broken stub of pencil. I wrote about the sound of soccer crowds echoing from Maracanã, the bitterness of cheap cachaça, the sharp, joyful violence of carnival. I wrote about my father's hands, cracked from years pressing oranges beneath the sun, and my mother's careful, hopeful silence. I wrote because it was the only thing that ever made me feel real. Every rejection stung. I sent stories to magazines and small presses, sometimes hearing nothing. Sometimes getting a thin, polite unfortunately that felt like a stone in my shoe. My family called, but the conversations grew shorter. My father's voice was always thick with disappointment. "You hungry yet?" Months floated by. My rent notice stuck, unpaid, to the door. I got sick with a cough that wouldn't leave. On especially bad nights, I considered calling my father, begging for the market job, anything to stop feeling like a ghost in my own city. Fear pressed on my chest, cold and heavy. One humid night, as the city wept with rain, I stared at what I'd written, the scattered chapters, the unfinished sentences, the sentences curled into themselves with shame. Was it ridiculous to think I could do this? Was I nothing but a child with delusions? Maybe my family was right. I sat on the narrow bed, head in my hands, the fan ticking overhead, and wept. But sometimes it was the challenge itself, the sound of their laughter echoing around my skull, that kept me going. I wrote about everything they said I couldn't. I wrote the city as I felt it, the tenderness, the brutality, a relentless hope. I owed it to myself not to back down. I was 30 when things changed. The novel, my first real novel, was done. It was ugly, stitched together, but it was mine. I barely recognized myself in the mirror, beard patchy, hair prematurely gray, eyes burning with the same mixture of desperation and bravery. I sent the manuscript off, half expecting yet another rejection. 3 months later, I came home from my shift at the bar to find an email blinking in the dark. The subject, interest in Sol sobre Vidigal. I read the message through twice before I believed it. A publisher, Editora Agora, wanted to meet. The weeks that followed were nervous, surreal. I went to the meeting in a borrowed shirt, sweat trickling down my back. The editor, a soft-spoken woman named Luciana, spoke about voice, about truth, about a market that maybe for once wanted to hear a new kind of story. She asked about my family, and I lied, saying we were all very proud and close. The next 6 months stretched into a blur of edits, proofs, and hope. When they handed me the first copy, a book with my name on the cover, bright orange and blue and beautiful, I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. Still, no one in my family knew. I sent a single copy home that December, signed with trembling ink. Silence. I assumed it was lost or thrown out with the junk mail. I told myself it didn't matter, but in truth, I wanted them to know. I wanted them to see, to finally believe. The book came out January 10th. Reviews were slow, but kind. A journalist from O Globo called it honest, full of the sweat and salt of Rio's real hills. An influencer filmed a video in front of the old Vidigal football pitch, reading the opening paragraph. Sales simmered. Not huge, but enough that the publisher reached out to talk about a second run. A year later, the book was everywhere. Not international, but in the places that mattered. Bus stations, corner shops, even the tourist kiosks along Ipanema Beach. My world changed in small, steady ways. My apartment was still cheap and cramped, but there was a desk now. I taught workshops at libraries in Rocinha and Complexo de Limão. Kids whose mothers whispered, "He wrote a book about us, not about them." One afternoon, an invitation arrived. The biggest bookstore on Rua do Ouvidor wanted a launch event for the paperback, a signing. There would be posters, the publisher said, my name in letters large enough to see from the street. I hesitated. I had spent years quietly surviving, nursing my hurt. It would be easy to stay away, to avoid the risk of disappointment or worse, humiliation. But I called my mother. "There's an event. Maybe you could come?" She sounded older than I remembered. All of us? Even your father? He